The overcast sky and gentle, gentle rain that's been falling this morning mirrors the deep sadness we all feel as today we gather to farewell Martha Ewinger. A woman who was the definition of love, of courage, of humility. A woman with enormous compassion for others. On behalf of Martha's children, Inga and Frank, and their respective families, I warmly welcome you. And thank you for being here to not only farewell Martha, but to reminisce and give thanks for her life. I'm Janice Tate, and I'm honoured to be leading Martha's service of farewell, as I am her daughter-in-law, and so this is my last tangible gift to her. Just before we begin Martha's eulogy, a few housekeeping matters. If you haven't already silenced your mobile phones, would you please do so now? And if you haven't yet signed the memorial book, I know the family would appreciate you doing so after this service. And if you should wish to make a donation in Martha's memory, the family has nominated the Cancer Council, and envelopes are available in the foyer if you wish to make a donation. And following this chapel service, the family warmly invites you all to gather with them in the adjacent function room, where you can not only share refreshments but also your special memories of Mutti. We begin honouring Mutti with her grandchildren Heidi Marie, Heath, Adam and Mark lighting candles of remembrance. Candles will be lit for Mutti's step-grandchildren Udo and Harry, who live in Germany, and though unable to be here, are certainly with us in spirit and are also deeply grieving at the passing of such a good woman. I now invite the grandchildren to come forward and light the remembrance candles. Our Umi never stopped giving. We always saw joy in her smile. Her eyes shone with warm understanding, and we felt gentle strength in her touch. Our Umi never stopped giving the love that we cherished so much. Umi, the glow of these candles represent our eternal love. Thank you all. Morty's son-in-law, Michael, will now share with us a reading of the Gospel according to Matthew.
This is a reading from the Holy Gospel. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory be to thee, O Lord. At that time Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. At that time Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. This is the gospel of the Lord. We can all say, Praise be to thee, O Christ.
Praise be to thee, O Christ. Mutti was a very special woman who selflessly devoted her life to loving and caring for her family. Her contributions to the world, like those of so many others like her, often went unnoticed, appearing as insignificant in the grand scheme of things, except to those who were lucky enough to have been blessed with her love. Firstly as a daughter, then as a sister, later as a wife and mother, then as a grandmother, and finally as a great-grandmother. Mutti showered those she cherished with her enduring and unconditional love. Oceans away, Mutti's step-grandson Udo, as a tribute to her, recorded the 23rd Psalm, the comforting words of which we will now hear.
Liebe Tante Martha, zum Abschied von uns allen hier, von Mira, Sina, Levin, Leon, Andrea, Harry und Manfred und natürlich von mir, spreche ich nochmal wie bei Opas Beerdigung für dich, den Psalm 23. Der Herr ist mein Hirte, mir wird nichts mangeln. Er weidet mich auf einer grünen Aue und führet mich zum frischen Wasser. Er erquicket meine Seele, er führet mich auf rechter Straße um seines Namens willen. Und ob ich schon wanderte im finstern Tal, fürchte ich kein Unglück. Denn du bist bei mir, dein Stecken und Stab trösten mich. Du bereitest vor mir einen Tisch, im Angesicht meiner Feinde. Du salbest mein Haupt mit Öl und schenkest mir voll ein. Gutes und Barmherzigkeit werden mir folgen mein Leben lang, und ich werde bleiben im Hause des Herrn immer da. Goodbye, Tante Martha. Say hello to Opa and Mom. I will miss you. Bye.
"5 years ago, Mutti shared with me the earlier part of her life's journey, and I will now honour and validate her life by sharing this with you. Martha Mayer was born in the city of Ruma, Yugoslavia, on the 3rd of June 1925. She was of German descent, as her forefathers settled in Austria-Hungary, which after the First World War was renamed Yugoslavia. She was very close to her mother Rosa and father Matthew and brothers Joseph and Frank. Her family had vineyards in the countryside where they had hired staff to work the land. It was a time of prosperity. Sadly, Mutti's father died when she was 13, and one warm memory Mutti had was how her father, who was a tailor, would send his daughter to buy sewing threads for his trade. Mutti felt very proud doing this task, and she looked forward to going to the shop as the salesperson would keep for Mutti the empty boxes the threads came in. Mutti attended the local school, leaving at age 15. She then took on an apprenticeship for dressmaking, including embroidery. In 1941, she gained her diploma in dressmaking, but due to the war, she worked from home, sewing for the people in her city, under the auspices of Mrs. Brown, her sewing teacher. Mutti's grandfather was very strict, and she was not allowed to even go dancing. Still, she enjoyed spending time with two of her very close friends, Marie, who lived round the corner and was like a sister, and also Maria, her cousin. Fate played a hand in 1944 that was to have repercussions throughout Mutti's life. Mutti's grandfather died in 1943, and so the women of the family were independent and made their own decisions. The Mayer family, that's Umi's maiden name, unlike many other families who returned to their homelands of Germany and Austria, decided to stay put, to not leave Ruma when hearing of the communist invasion. Or rather, Mutti's grandmother Elizabeth decided to stay and not flee, as during the First World War, Elizabeth had fled into the countryside to hide from their aggressors. And nothing out of the ordinary occurred, and so they were able to safely return home within 2 weeks. And because of this experience, Elizabeth decided it was silly to pack up and move when everything would settle down within weeks. And so it came about that in 1944, Mutti was captured by the partisans and interred in the I'm not German, I'll spell it, Svlear. How do you say that, Inga? Svlear concentration camp. However, Mutti was one of the fortunate ones, as she was put to work on a farm, sowing, maintaining and harvesting crops. Her mother and brothers were sent to the Yarek concentration camp. Mutti worked hard on the farm and lived in a large dormitory with the other girls who worked the farm. For 3 years, she never tasted a piece of meat, though she remained healthy by eating the crops as she picked them. She recalled the blisters from the hard work and how in winter she had to pick the corn in the snow. Mutti made a very good friend in the camp, a woman called Petronella, and they continued to write to each other for in excess of 60 years. In fact, a card came just last week, a birthday card from Petronella for Umi. When Mutti returned to Germany in 1986, she and Petronella were reunited after nearly 40 years apart. After the war, Mutti returned to Ruma to search for her family. She was told by neighbours that her great-grandmother, grandmother and other relatives had been rounded up along with others and taken into the countryside where they were shot. For 2 more years, Mutti continued searching for her mother and brothers. We can only imagine the depth of her grief on learning they had died in the concentration camp. And then fate played another hand when Mutti was transferred to the Yarek camp, and though bearing the same name, it was not the same place where her family had perished. Frank Ewinger had been in this camp, though when Mutti arrived, he lived outside the camp, as he had been given the position of driver for the city councillor. In his comings and goings, Frank met Martha in the camp, and he'd often visit her, bringing gifts of fresh fruit like grapes, fruit she hadn't seen in years. In 1948, the communists agreed to Upa's request that he take Mutti out of the camp to live with him. And so in 1949, Inga was born, followed by Frank in 1950. And then, in 1953, the Ewingers left Yugoslavia and took up residence in Germany for 18 months, the time it took for them to organise the paperwork so they could relocate to Australia. And just before they departed for Australia, the government offered Pa a flat at a very nominal rental with a lease of 99 years. Now, Pa never told Mutti of this offer, as he knew she would then want to stay. But he felt they had lost everything, and so they had nothing to lose by starting afresh where they would be able to get ahead in a country that had so many opportunities it was called the lucky country. Coming from such affluent families, Mutti and Pa had never had to save for anything, and suddenly they had to make their own way in the world. Finally, in November 1955, the Ewinger family set sail for Australia on the ship Scorbrum. Unfortunately, the journey was not a delightful holiday for Mutti, as she was seasick for the full 5-week journey. Now, just for a minute, imagine the courage it took for Mutti and Pa to leave behind everything familiar and travel to the other side of the world where they didn't know the language, and their worldly possessions consisted of a small cardboard suitcase each. But of course, Mutti had her trusty tool of trade, her sewing machine, with her. They were the first of their family to settle in Australia. And so a new chapter in their life began when the ship docked in Melbourne on the 31st of December 1955. And like many thousands of immigrants, the Ewinger family took up accommodation at the Bonegilla migrant hostel. In return for his family's assisted passage, Pa worked for the government on the railways in Rawlina, and that's in Western Australia. After Pa first arrived in Rawlina, 4 weeks later, Mutti, Frank and Inga joined him. Rawlina is a small country town on the Nullarbor Desert. Mutti made the best of things, and being resourceful, she set about establishing a bountiful vegetable garden, whilst Pa caught rabbits for them to eat and also to sell. Looking to the future, they started saving to return to Melbourne, which they did after 18 months in Rawlina, where eventually they lived in a large house in Punt Road, Richmond, along with other family members who had arrived in Australia. And 2 years later, they moved into their very own home in Coppin Street, Richmond, where Inga and Frank sometimes shared a bedroom whenever Mutti and Pa offered a room to a family member in need. Mutti and Pa worked extremely hard to have their dream home built in Begonia Court, North Blackburn. The typical Australian dream at the time of a triple-fronted brick veneer home with a large backyard, big enough for an incinerator, fruit trees, a vegetable garden, and later even a smokehouse for curing meat. And finally, Inga and Frank had the luxury of a permanent bedroom all to themselves. During this time, Mutti worked full-time at Your Expert Service, where she was a loyal employee for 21 years. When Inga and Frank recall growing up with their mum, it's the little things that resonate and mean so very much, memories that together help form a picture of a loving, caring mother. And it's Inga and Frank who will now honour their mother with their tributes.
Today's the day I have been dreading all my life, to celebrate the life of my wonderful mother, a very loving and giving lady, always considerate of others, always putting her needs after her families and friends. Recognising the inevitable, I have prayed that when it came for Mutti, she would be spared a long illness and disability. I thank God he granted my wishes, but it is still so hard and unbelievable to hear and to accept. There are so many memories of Omi, Mutti, I call her Omi or Mutti, all around me. She hemmed the dress that I am wearing today. She re-sewed the buttons on my coat because she said, they always come off the clothes you buy today. Spoken by the perfectionist dressmaker, of course. And my freezer is full of the cakes and food she always made for us. Family meant everything to Mutti. I know everyone says that of their parents, but if you knew Mutti, you would understand she really did everything for her family. Nothing made her happier than to cook, sew, clean, buy for us, or to just be with us. In recent times, every Wednesday after school, I would drive to pick her up. After school, and she would come with me and be with me on the Thursday when I didn't work. She would have bags with her every time, full of eggs, groceries, food, cakes, things she had made for me, for Heidi Marie or for Mark. Every single week, without fail, she would be bringing something to give to us. On Wednesday night, we would watch Deal or No Deal, and then we would have dinner. On Thursday, she would do my ironing. I haven't ironed in years, and this job will now bring me a beautiful memory of Omi's. But Mutti needed to be useful, and I know how happy she was to be helping me, and that's why she would do my ironing for me. I also remember with much fondness when we went on holidays with us on our first trip to Europe in 1986, and when I took her on a cruise to Asia for her 80th birthday, her only holiday with just Mutti and myself, and the best holiday she said she had ever had. At that time at least, because going with me to visit Edward, Heidi, Marie and Brett in America last year was the ultimate holiday she had ever had, to go and visit her beloved Edward, her jewel in her life. And I do believe the other candle burning there is for Edward, the grandson, who's not here today. Mutti had great compassion and empathy for people, especially those who had lost family members. She often said to me, "I lost my mother at 18 and I want to do for my family what my mother couldn't do for me." And this she always did. That is why she was such a loving grandmother, or Tante Marta, as Udo and Harry called her, to Udo and Harry and their families, as they had lost their mother at a young age. She never forgot their birthdays or anyone else's, and I now have the honour of maintaining that tradition myself. Similarly, she felt deeply for the Bonner girls who lost their mother at a young age, and to Sally Ann, who never had a grandmother nor a father later in life. She once said to me, "Maybe Michael will be there to walk Sally Ann down the aisle," and which is not meant to be a hint at all, Sally Ann. In the same vein, she felt kindly to our friend David, who also never had a mother. "Please give him some of my Christmas cookies," she would say whenever she would bake some for us. Feeling compassion for those less fortunate was a trait that Omi had in volumes. Friendships were also very important to Mutti. Although she only had one living cousin in Austria after the war, she had many valued friends, and at Christmas time she would be sending over 30 cards to her friends overseas. Even after 58 years, she never lost touch with friends or family, and she always remembered their birthdays off by heart. I wish I had that memory. She befriended all the families in her street and would have them around for afternoon teas, and I know many of them are here today. Mutti was extremely proud of her family's achievements. She was overwhelmed with joy when her only granddaughter got married, and even more so when she had her first grandson, Edward, to cuddle. She would also be so proud if she could be with Mark and Michelle's wedding in March this year. She was so proud when all of us had our graduations, as you'll see in the photo displays later. Again, she felt great pride to have an author in the family when Jam published her first book. She was so proud when Brett was selected as the only Australian to be sent to the US by his company, even though it meant being away from us. And how happy she was to visit Heidi Marie, Brett and Edward last September to give them her longed-for hugs and kisses. And I am happy that Brett, Heidi Marie and Edward are here with us today for Omi's celebration. She was especially proud of Michael too, whenever she saw him in the newspapers or on TV. She was proud to be with us at his instigation as a Bayside councillor again last year. She more than once said to me, "Michael would be the best Prime Minister because he is a very clever and honest man," and I would have to agree with her. And again, last Thursday, if she had still been with us, she would have been so proud to hear that Michael won the best stockbroking stock picker in all of Australia. You may think that I'm bragging a little. Actually, I am. But I know more than anyone else that he is a hard-working and a very smart person and deserves the honours. But Mutti's pride and joy of all is Edward. He made her face shine with happiness. She loved him so very much. My loving and beautiful mother has set the bar high for what it is to be a true friend, a mother and grandmother. I only hope I can be half as good as she was, and to do more unto others than they do unto you, which is how she lived her life. Another of my memories of Mutti and Oppa, a love for their family, and I mentioned this at Oppa's funeral. When Michael and I were first married and we would go on holidays, she and Oppa would drive from Blackburn to East Bentley to water our gardens so we wouldn't have to worry. Obviously, we hadn't met Ruth yet at this stage. Otherwise, it would have been her privilege, and I'm sure she would have done it equally as willingly. I believe my mother had so much love and kindness in her because it was just in her heart, but also her upbringing played a role. Mutti and Oppa were born into well-to-do families. They owned property and were affluent without needing to work for income. After the war, the communists seized all their possessions and their families were killed. And I know that this made them appreciate just being alive and having a family and friends as the true things to value in life. Finally, I want to thank a few special people who have helped us at this difficult time. To Frank and Jan, who largely prepared for today's celebration and honour of Omi. To my loving children, especially Brett, Heidi Marie and Edward, who came all the way from the US. To all family and friends for their kind words, cards and flowers. I especially want to thank Lottie, Chris and John for being exceptional friends, neighbours and family to Mutti over many, many years. To Sally Ann for coming from Tasmania and for singing a hymn later at this celebration today. To Michael, who is always there for me. To my doctor for giving me Valium so that I am able to survive today. And above all, to thank God for giving us Mutti for 88 years.
I feel so fortunate to have had Mum to her 88th birthday, which we celebrated together recently. Mum gave Ingrid and I all the love any child could wish for. She was there to hold our hands when we needed her, guided us, supported us, and would do anything for us. Nothing was ever too much trouble. And when her grandchildren were born, she also showered them with all her love. She really enjoyed caring for them, sewing clothes for them, making their favourite meals, and of course baking a special cake for their birthdays. And with the arrival of young Edward, a great grandchild, everything seemed complete. Sure, she wanted more. In fact, she was a little envious of my Auntie Ottie, who has 9 grandchildren. 9 great-grandchildren, I beg your pardon. Mum taught us the importance of having good values, to respect people, honesty, loyalty, integrity, and a strong work ethic. When we speak of loyalty and work ethic, Mum was extraordinary. She only had one job after arriving in Australia, working as a dressmaker for a company in Collingwood until her retirement. As a child, I can remember Mum working all the time. She would work her 8-hour day as a dressmaker, run the home after work, and when we all sat down to relax in front of the TV, Mum would pull some garments out of a bag she brought home from work, and she would either hem a skirt or make alterations to a garment. You see, Mum was paid piecemeal, and her income depended upon how many garments she completed. The only time as a child I recall Mum relaxing in front of the TV with the family was during her annual leave, and in those days it was 3 weeks. I often tried to put myself into Mum and Dad's position, arriving in 1955 with Inga 6 and me 5, their entire belongings in 2 suitcases, not knowing anybody apart from the 2 Italian families they met during the voyage, unable to speak a word of English and trying to settle after the upheaval of the war and Mum losing her entire family. This made Christmas, Easter, family birthday so special to Mum, and we always tried to be there to celebrate special occasions with Mum. I have to thank my wife Jan for being so understanding, as we spent more Christmases and Easters with Mum than we did with Jan's mum and dad. Mum loved Jan visiting because she would always put a smile on her face with her humour. And Jan loved to see Mum have a giggle. Has anybody ever met a funny accountant?
No.
We didn't go on many holidays together. I recall going to Adelaide in the 60s, visiting friends and camping with aunties and cousins. It was Inga and Michael who have taken Mum on some fabulous holidays. And I just want to mention their visit to America last September to visit Heidi Marie, Brett and Edward. Earlier, Jan mentioned that Mutti's friend Marie, living oceans apart for over 60 years, they had not met up, instead kept in touch by correspondence and telephone. After visiting Heidi Marie and her family, they all flew to Chicago to meet up with Marie. How excited Mum was to see Marie. This would have made a warm and fuzzy segment on a current affair. Mum was your typical European mother who loved to cook and especially bake cakes. Of her grandchildren, Heath in particular took an active interest in Mum's cooking and would often ask her how she made dishes, which gave her a huge thrill. I know Heath will continue cooking some of Mum's favourite dishes. For almost my entire working life, Mum would ask me what I would like her to make for my work colleagues for Christmas. It would generally be strudel or sometimes a special cake. My work colleagues enjoyed them immensely and would often send Mum a thank you card for being so kind. Now, prior to Christmas was the high season for cooking. Mum, Auntie Ottie, Lottie, Julie, Marie Sauer would get together and bake Christmas biscuits for up to 3 days. And I do hope I haven't missed anybody. So on Christmas Day, Mum would provide us with tins of wonderful assortment of biscuits made with love. But Mum wouldn't just bake for the family, she would bake for neighbours, even the doctor's surgery. I recall Mum telling me that the receptionist at the doctor's surgery spent an afternoon cooking with Mum. How kind Mum was.
Showing her how to make strudel.
And I need to make special mention of the Schmoll family. Who have lived next door to Mum for 50 years. In particular, Lottie. After Dad died, she sat with Mum every night to comfort her until she had the confidence to be on her own. It gave Inga and I great comfort to know she had loving relatives next door. I'd also like to thank Christian and John for the many times you took Mum with you on outings, drove her to the shops and to the doctors. Mutti, you have been a wonderful mum, not only to Inga and me, but Michael and Jan, who also called you Mutti. You were the best grandmother and a great grandmother. I know you are so proud of us all. You are always in our hearts, and the special memories we have of you we'll always treasure. Mutti, ich liebe dich.
I just thought of one more thing that is significant to me in what I train Omi. Omi would never argue with anyone. She always gave in. She would never want there to be an argument. I think I'm the exact opposite, and perhaps I ought to learn from Omi.
Beautiful, beautiful tributes. And can I say, Inga, that Frank has not inherited that trait of his mother's, where always giving in and not arguing. He is the opposite too. Yeah. Inga mentioned in her tribute, and I mentioned this to Inga and Michael recently, just last Sunday, that Mutti has done her ironing for years. Well, I'd just like to say it's been 40 years, because Mutti said to me just a couple of months ago, and Frank, do you know, Jan, I have been ironing for Inga for 40 years. And I said, what? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, Mutti, I think you should go down to Inga and tell her that you are due for long service leave and you'd like a gold watch. And Mutti just went, yeah. She said yeah a lot of times to me, her outspoken granddaughter. Grandmothers are put on this earth for a purpose, to show what kindness means, to provide happiness for little children, and to leave wisdom and a sense of values for her grandchildren to live by. And so it was for Martha. In fact, the highlight of her life was when her grandchildren began to arrive. And it was beautiful to watch Martha shower so much love and care on her grandchildren. And watching her do this made one realise how very lucky Inga and Frank were to have been mothered by her. And as has been said over and over today, but can't be said enough, when Heidi Marie and Brett presented Mutti with her great-grandchild Edward, she was over the moon. And now it's Heidi Marie, Heath, Adam and Mark who will pay their tributes to their cherished Umi, and I invite them to come forward.
It was 1925. When an angel named Martha graced this earth. In 1949, you became known as Mutti. In 1979, you were crowned Omi twice. And in 2009, you received your crowning glory title of Adi. To have known you is to have loved you and be loved by you. Thank you for touching our lives. Today we have this opportunity to honour you and celebrate you, darling, amazing, beautiful Naomi. I cannot stand here and mention every single moment that I spent with you, but I can tell you this. Every moment was truly indescribable. It occurred to me whilst I was thinking about what I wanted to share with everybody here today that I realised this. Whether it was sitting with Omi while she was cooking in the kitchen, or reading a new recipe in a magazine or cookbook, drinking a cup of tea, or even driving with her in the car, to a simple conversation with her. Coming away after spending time with her gave me a sense of calm, relax, and refreshment. And I ask, is that because she never raised her voice, was always agreeable and understanding, or truly and simply utterly selfless? If you pause for a moment to recall your last moment with Omi, perhaps you will agree with me. In our last conversation, I was wishing her a happy birthday exactly 2 weeks ago today. And I am even more than grateful that I was able to tell her that I loved her, and that Edward was also able to tell her that he loved her, and then we got to hear her tell us how much she loved us and Brett, but that she missed us so much. I'm going to leave you with this. The innocence of Edward's 4 years of age has brought a sense of relief and perspective for myself anyway. To quote my son, "We won't be able to see Artie because she has gone to bake cookies for the angels, and Artie is an angel too."
I would like to share with you some of the many experiences that I shared with our Umi. One of my earliest memories is sleeping over at Umi and Uppa's with Heath. We would sleep in Dad's old room with the photo of the bullfighter on the wall, which I found a little scary. But what was scarier was the rumour that Umi had seen a ghost in the house. As soon as we went to bed and our prayers had been said, I made sure that I wasn't getting up during the night to go to the bathroom. Come morning, I'd get up, I'd put Umi's handmade slippers on, which were known as patcha, and I would head into the kitchen for breakfast. Now the challenge was to find a breakfast cereal that was not past its use-by date. I would try and get a look at the cereal box's expiry date before making my choice between cornflakes or Nutrigrain. I eventually had to change my choice to what was fresh, and so I began to choose toast. Recently, we were over for lunch at Umi's, and this trend continued as I found bottles of soft drink that had a use-by date of 2008. They were home brand bottles that she paid about 50 cents each. I think Inga and Umi had gone on a soft drink spending spree at the time. Umi would never forget someone's birthday, and you would always receive a card from her. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that I found out Umi wrote messages on your card, using messages already printed from other birthday cards. So it was much to my excitement that I happened to stumble across a book in a gift shop with paragraphs to write on such occasions such as birthdays and weddings. Umi adored the book and used the words for all her cards. So if you're wondering how she came up with those sophisticated words, well, they were from my book, but also from her heart. When us grandkids were young, Umi, accompanied with Benji the dog, would regularly take us to the local park, and while we played, Umi would peel a few apples for us. After Uppa passed away, it was my turn to take her out to places, and we ventured to the likes of the Princess Theatre in the city, where we saw The Sound of Music, which was Umi's favourite show. And on another occasion, we went to the German Opera House in the city for dinner. Umi loved Aldi, and thank you to Chris, Lottie and John for taking her to that shop many times. In early December last year, Aldi featured German biscuits in the catalogue, so Umi and I went to Aldi. We started shopping and Umi found a few staple items and we put them in the trolley. We got around to the German biscuits and cakes and her eyes lit up with how many varieties there were. Her arms were full with biscuits and cakes she was purchasing for presents for her friends and family. She was conscious of only having $60 in her purse, but there was so much that she wanted. I encouraged her to put it all in the trolley. Of course she blew a shopping budget, but I loved the fact that I could pay for it all, as Umi had given so much to so many people in her lifetime, and it was time for us to give back to her. Once you started doing some gardening at Umi's, you would find Umi would be alongside you helping out. She took great pride in her garden. Umi always had on hand an old pair of shoes for us to garden in. I'm not sure if the shoes were from the op shop or if they were Uppa's. Umi was extremely interested in the travels that we all undertook, and it meant so much for us to send her a postcard. Umi had these postcards on display for years and would show her friends the places we travelled to. Umi's tiny TV was from the early 1990s with control buttons that were so small for her to see. And so her grandchildren last year bought Umi a 40-inch TV. She was very grateful. No longer did her friends have a better TV than her, As she said, she had the best TV going around. For Umi's 88th birthday, which we were all fortunate to share with her, my girlfriend Laura baked some cookies which Umi loved, and these put a big smile on her face. We also gave Umi a navel orange tree for her birthday, which we were going to plant in her backyard. We didn't get to plant it, Umi. However, we'll keep it and plant it in a special place. Umi, thank you for the 31 birthday cakes, the endless amounts of cooking chicken schnitzels, hamburgers and soups. Added to the continuous baking of German biscuits such as honey buttons will never be forgotten. I'm very grateful I had the opportunity to interview Umi for a Year 12 English project. I still have the audio from our discussion. From that I learnt so much about Umi's life, and compared to the struggles and challenges she faced, our lives are a breeze. We were extremely fortunate to be in your life, Umi. We stand proud to have known a lady like you, for you have impacted our lives greatly. The memory of your loving hugs, a gentle nature and gorgeous smile will always light our way.
Good afternoon. It's good to see so many familiar faces here today. And one thing I've realised from sitting over there for the last half an hour or so is that I get my red cheeks from Umi. I'd never made that connection before until now, so thank you, Umi. It is indeed a privilege to be standing here with the opportunity to say a few words about our Umi. Today, like Adam, I'll share with you a couple of my favourite memories and highlight exactly what she meant to me. For a woman that came from overseas and English was her second language, she was a great communicator. She was a brilliant communicator, in fact. She was amazing at corresponding with family and friends back in Europe, no doubt so very proud of the family she had built for herself in Australia. Airmail envelopes covered her living room. For a while there, she might have been Australia Post's biggest customer. We became so used to seeing Umi put letters and photographs in envelopes that a running joke started. Before every family group photo was taken, at Christmas, birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, one of us would say, "Hang on a second, everybody, let's get this pose right. This one's going back to Germany." I'm not sure my beautiful grandma ever understood the joke. I recall one day sitting around her living room talking about how we had been in touch with some friends overseas via email and had received a response from them soon after. Out of nowhere, Umi sprung into the conversation, fascinated that we were able to get responses back from people overseas so quickly. Umi complained that whenever she sent airmail, it would take weeks to hear back from people. Umi, no, email and airmail are two very different things. She was equally bemused when I would show her pictures on my phone of Heidi Marie, Brett and Edward in America. How did they get in there? Was this photo really taken today? Are you sure they are still in America? I could only imagine how confusing it was for her. Umi's love for those she cared about was truly magnificent. From my earliest memory, no example exists of her being anything but completely and utterly selfless. She always put family and those around her before anything else. And not just family, she also put people that we all cared about, her family, ahead of everybody else. I can think of numerous times when Umi would spend 5 minutes chatting to one of my mates. By the end of that conversation, Umi had invited them over for dinner and agreed to cater for their next birthday party. Beyond that, she would have arranged to send a cake or a tray of strudel into work with them on their birthday to share with their colleagues. Testament to anyone that has cared for you at some point in your life, there is so much we should all take from having known Umi. She was driven by and would do anything for those she loved. Her life is not complicated. She never asked for material possessions, only that we all made an effort to spend time in her company. She was generous and kind to all, patient and never short of conversation. Though she may not have understood a lot of what we talked about, she was interested in everything we were willing to say. I cannot recall Umi ever having raised her voice, though we'll never forget the way she would draw me in for 10 quick kisses each time we met and each time we said goodbye. I look forward to one day telling my own children about you, Umi. I know you would have loved to have been around to meet them, though I promise to follow your example and love them as deeply as you loved all of us. I still owe you 10 kisses.
Over time, there will be a point where we no longer feel sad when we think about Omi, and we begin smiling at what an amazing woman she was. Some of the greatest memories of our childhood has involved Omi. I know for myself personally, I'd always look forward to going over to Omi and Oppa's for the amazing food that would always be put on the table for us grandkids. From schnitzels, paprika, kartoffeln, homemade soups were always on the menu and were restaurant quality right to the end. Mind you, these were all usually made with some type of amendment to cater for younger Adam's dietary requirements at the time. She would always have some kind of cake, biscuit or treat readily available for us kids to feast on. Although while I didn't always know exactly what type of German treat it was and failed to ever see it on the shelves at Safeway when shopping with Mum, it always tasted great. It would bring a smile to your face as we would sit down at Christmas, Easter or whatever special occasion it was. The jokes would be flying around, mainly courtesy of Auntie Jan. And then you would glance over to Omi, who would just be sitting there with a smile on her face, not quite understanding what was being said, but just happy and content because we're all happy and smiling. As we grew up and technology was welcome to the world, Omi would always make you laugh when she would leave a message on a voice message on our mobile phone stating in the third person, "Mark, Omi was calling." It was about this age that Omi became my own personal tailor, making sure that every shirt I owned was tailored to the perfect shape, although there was one particular occasion when I came home one afternoon to find Omi with my newest and most expensive shirt I'd ever bought placed on her sewing table. This shirt had rips and holes all in very carefully designed places. This was the fashion as a 20-year-old, and just as Omi was about to get stuck into repairing these holes, I had to lunge over to grab it from her. Then proceeded to explain to Omi that I paid good money to have these holes carefully ripped into the shirt. I could tell she thought I was ridiculous. It is so great to see so many of Omi's friends here today, and that just demonstrates what an amazing person she really was. She will be sadly missed, but never forgotten. She's back with Oppa now, after just over a decade apart, and I'm sure as Oppa rests on the couch up there, he has already yelled out to Omi in the kitchen to make him a coffee. And there is no doubt in my mind that she would have definitely tested out the oven and baked all of her new friends a Black Forest cake for them all to eat as she looks down upon us and smiles. We, as 4 grandkids, have been spoilt with amazing grandparents, and as Omi is the last to leave us, it makes us think how special each and every one was to all of us in different ways. You'll all never be forgotten. And finally, standing here today, it makes us think about our remarkable parents and how proud we really are of them, and how thankful we are of the life they've provided for us and all the sacrifices they've always made. And to this, we just want to say thank you, and we love you.
Thank you, you 4 gorgeous grandkids. It was beautiful. When our grandparent passes away, a link in the chain is broken. But I know just as your Omi would want of you, her grandchildren, will continue to support each other and so ensure the family chain remains united. And how blessed you all were to be the beneficiaries of your Omi's legacies of kindness, selflessness and compassion. What would we do without our memories? They are a place of refuge where we go when we want to relive special moments. So let's now take a journey down memory lane as we view special moments in Muti's life.
If only I could see again the twinkle in my mother's eyes, to again her gentle voice and have her hold me when I cry. If only she could be here now to help me free my troubled mind. I wonder if my mother knows, although I've tried, no peace I find. It seems 100 years ago that when I'd cry, she'd wipe my tears, and just like magic, when I'd fall, she'd be right there to calm my fears. Oh, Mom, if you could only see the hurt and pain I'm going through, I must have cried 10 million tears since the tears I cried when I lost you. I know you're never far away. I almost feel you close to me. Oh, how I'd love to hold your hand, your loving smile I'd love to see. But in my heart you're still alive. I think about you every day. Oh, Mother dear, why did you die? And leave me here so far away.
And how perfectly those photos encapsulate Muti's life, surrounded by family, friends and cakes. Yes, Muti's arms were wide enough to love and care for not only her family but also extended family and her many friends. They in turn dearly loved Muti. With Muti having lived to the great age of 88, many of her friends have passed on. One group of friends, Kathy, Vera, Maria and Joseph, are unable to be here today due to ill health. However, they are certainly with us in spirit. We thank all Muti's friends for enriching her life with their friendship. The recurring words we have heard in the last few days have been a beautiful, kind and caring lady, the most selfless woman I have known. You only had to meet her the once to realise what a special woman she was. Her family was her life. She knew what things in life really mattered. The magnificent arrangement of flowers adorning the casket will be on display during refreshments, and please, if you wish, do take a flower home with you in Umi's memory. And when you think on that flower's beauty, think on all the beauty that Mutti brought to this world. Mutti loved to read about the royal family, especially when it concerned Princess Diana. And so it is appropriate that I now share with you a poem read at the funeral of the Queen Mother, because to us Mutti was our Queen. You can shed tears that she is gone, or you can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that she's left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she's gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what she'd want. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. Mutti, how very proud I was of you after Pa's death in 2001, when suddenly you had to take over the running of the household. You did well paying the bills and making decisions and getting used to living on your own. And with your trusty shopping jeep, you found your own way to get around. Yes, rarely did we leave your house with empty hands. If you hadn't been baking, you would fill our arms with specials you had purchased. Over the last year, you would always have a dozen eggs for all your family members, and gosh, we ate a lot of omelettes. My son Heath made the comment to us, your grandson Umi, that he didn't want any more eggs Umi purchased from IGA as they were not from free-range chooks. And so, the next time Mutti proudly offered us a dozen eggs, Frank said, "We don't want any more of your eggs, Umi," or Mutti, and she said, "Why not?" And Frank said, "Because they aren't free range." Well, Mutti's lips drooped at the thought she couldn't spoil us with eggs anymore. And anyhow, what the heck did free range mean? "I still want your eggs, Mutti," I told her, but Frank's disparaging remark obviously overrode mine. As not to be deterred in expressing her love in this way, Umi found another necessity for us. Within a week, we received the first of many, 24 packets of toilet rolls that were regularly on special at IGA. I was reminded of Mutti's enormous compassion when just weeks ago, in an offhand manner, I suggested she say a prayer for me that night. And Mutti responded with, "I always do. It takes me an hour to cover everyone, my family and my friends." "How do you remember everyone?" I said. "Well, if I forget, I have their names all written out," replied Mutti. I thought she was probably exaggerating. After all, an hour of prayer every night? After her death, I came upon a little book, her prayer book, and inside was an extremely large list of names, beginning with Upa, then a dash, and then self, and after those two beneath were so many names of all the people who mattered in Mutti's life. I will miss so much about you, Mutti, especially how, if I was eating a slice of cake you had made and I commented on how tasty it was, you would immediately go into a litany of ingredients. 4 eggs, 2 cups of flour, teaspoon of cinnamon, 4 ounces of butter, and so on. I will miss how whenever you mentioned a friend or relative's name, you could rattle off the year they were born, which village they came from, and the birth dates of their children. I will miss how when I was pushed for time, I could just go to my freezer and usually find a meal you had made of cabbage rolls or stuffed peppers. In fact, the day you died, you had been defrosting mincemeat to make those meals for your family. I will certainly miss how you would always refer to inanimate objects by using a pronoun. Like when referring to the vacuum cleaner, you would say, "He is not working properly." Or if you couldn't find the broom, "Where is she?" But most of all, I will miss your hugs, such tight hugs like you didn't want to let go, and I understood where that deep desire came from. This need to hug your family so tight as having lost your parents and brothers tragically and so early in your life. You weren't going to let your children and their families go anywhere. Muti, to you, family was everything, but to your family, you were everything. How very grateful I am for the kindness you showed my beautiful son Jason, and how very proud I was when you introduced me as my other daughter. Muti, you are a part of my soul. Excuse me a moment. Of course, all our hearts go out to you, Ewinger and Frank, for you are today saying goodbye to the woman who gave you life, the one who nurtured, protected and taught you so very much. Your mother leaves you the greatest legacies of a sense of family and the need to nurture those bonds, and that it is in the giving of ourselves to others that make us such an integral part of this world. When our mothers die, it can feel like a piece of us is dislodged forever, but we survive her death by knowing she lives on in us in all of her descendants. We survive by revisiting those wonderful memories of the special times we spent with her. Your mother has not left you entirely when memories of her fill your spirit. It's certainly true that a mother holds her children's hands for a while, their hearts forever, and now you will hold your Muti's heart forevermore. Muti requested that when it came time for us to farewell her, the hymn, "Take Thou My Hand and Lead Me," be played, just as it had been at Pa's funeral. And we are fortunate to have a very, very dear family friend, Sally Ann, sing this hymn for Muti. Thank you, Sally Ann. I'm sure Umi was listening. It is now time for us to say a final farewell, and so if you can, would you please stand with me? And please, if you wish, join with me in saying the comforting words of the Lord's Prayer, and this prayer is printed on the bookmark. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Our Mutti, our Umi, our friend. In our lives, you were goodness, compassion, and understanding. You were strength and courage, a helper in times of need, a comforter in times of sorrow, and an extraordinary inspiration to us all. You were the greatest peace and the grandest love. And your love surrounds us every day. You are part of us forever. Nothing can now detract from the happiness you shared with your loved ones. What has been forever. The past, with all its meaning, is sacred and secure. We will now have a moment's silence as we reflect on our loved ones and the blessings they bring into our lives. Whatever this life has been, of love or faith or beauty, whatever these hands have done from kindness, care or duty, whatever her lasting joy of deepest human feeling, and whatever her inner eye has seen of God's revealing. Now, let her spirit go, beyond our time and telling, where love's prepared a room and peace has made a dwelling. Now reunited with all your loved ones who have gone before you. Rest now in eternal peace.
how deeply your